The air in our first apartment smelled of fresh paint and hope. It was a shoebox, barely 600 square feet, with a creaky floorboard under the kitchen table where we'd sit, her hand brushing mine as we plan a life bigger than the walls around us. My name's Ethan, and I was 27 then, working double shifts at a warehouse, my back aching, but my heart full. Sarah's laughter was my reward. Bright, unguarded, like sunlight breaking through a storm. Her vows, spoken under a cheap gazebo 2 years prior, were my scripture. Through everything, I'm yours. I believed her. I had to. But there were signs, small at first, like pebbles rolling before a landslide. Her phone glowed late at night, screen tilted just out of my sight. Work, she'd say, her voice tight, her fingers dancing too quickly over the keys. I'd nod, swallowing the unease that coiled in my gut. My hands, callous from lifting crates, felt too heavy to reach for her phone, to demand answers. Trust was my vow to her. Trust was what kept me sane. She'd sit across from me at dinner, her fork tracing patterns in her untouched pasta, her eyes drifting to some place I couldn't follow. You okay? I'd ask, my voice softer than I felt. She'd smile, too quick, too thin, and say just tired. But her tiredness wasn't from late nights at her receptionist job. It was something deeper, something that made my chest tighten when I caught her staring at old photos on her phone, her thumb lingering on a face I didn't know. One evening, I came home early, my shift cut short by a broken forklift. The apartment was quiet, save for the hum of the fridge and a faint murmur from our bedroom. I paused, my boots still on, my heart thudding like a drum in my ribcage. Her voice, low and warm, carried through the thin walls. You remember that summer? She said, a laugh in her tone I hadn't heard in months. I stood frozen, my breath shallow, as she spoke to someone who wasn't me. I wish we'd never stopped talking. My fists clenched, nails biting into my palms. I wanted to storm in, to demand who was stealing her voice, her warmth. But my feet wouldn't move. Fear, cold, sharp, pinned me in place. Was it cowardice or love that kept me silent? I didn't know. I just stood there, listening as her words carved a hollow in my chest. She hung up, and when she emerged, her eyes widened caught. You're home early, she said, her smile faltering like a candle in the wind. I didn't want to interrupt, I said, my voice steady despite the tremor in my hands. She laughed, a nervous flutter, and brushed past me to the kitchen. Just catching up with an old friend, she said, her back to me, her hands busy with nothing. I want to believe her. I wanted to believe the woman who'd promised me forever wouldn't slip away in late-night whispers. But doubt is a slow poison, and it was already in my veins. That night, I lay beside her, her breathing soft and even, while my mind churned. Who was he? Why did her voice light up for him when it had dimmed for me? The vow we'd made felt like a chain now, heavy and cold. I stared at the ceiling, my pulse loud in my ears, and wondered if love could survive a truth I wasn't ready to face. Her phone buzzed on the nightstand, a single pulse in the dark. I didn't reach for it, but I knew, deep in my bones, that the name on that screen would change everything. The name was Ryan. It fell from her mouth one Sunday morning, casual as rain, while she stirred sugar into her coffee. Ryan used to love this song, she said, her voice trailing as the radio played some sappy ballad from the early 2000s. I froze, my toast halfway to my mouth, the kitchen suddenly too small. Her eyes flicked to mine, then away, like she'd spilled something she couldn't mop up. Who's Ryan? I asked, keeping my tone light, though my pulse hammered in my throat. She shrugged, a practiced move, her fingers tightening around her mug. Just a guy from high school, she said, her smile thin as a blade. We were close back then. Close. The word landed like a stone in my gut. I chewed my toast, the bread dry in my mouth, and nodded like it didn't matter. But it did. Her voice had softened when she said his name, the way it used to when she'd whisper mine in the dark. That week, Ryan's name kept surfacing, a splinter under my skin. She'd mentioned him in passing, how he'd been the star of their school soccer team, how he'd written her a poem once, how they'd lost touch after graduation. Each memory she shared was a thread, weaving a tapestry I wasn't part of. I'd sit on our sagging couch, my hands clasped tight, listening as she laughed about some prom night prank they'd pulled. Her eyes sparkled, and I hated how they dulled when she looked at me. I started noticing her phone habits more. She'd angle it away when she typed, her thumbs quick and secretive. At night, she'd slip out of bed, claiming she needed water, but I'd hear the soft tap of her texting from the kitchen. My jaw clenched so hard it ached. I wanted to confront her, to demand why this ghost from her past was haunting our present. But every time I opened my mouth, the words stuck, heavy with fear. What if I pushed too hard and lost her? One evening, I found her yearbook on the coffee table, open to a dog-eared page. There he was, Ryan, grinning in a faded photo, his arms slung around a younger Sarah. Her smile in that picture was brighter than any I'd seen in months. My chest tightened, a slow burn spreading through me. I traced his face with my fingertip, memorizing the sharp jaw, the cocky tilt of his head. He looked like the kind of guy who got what he wanted. And he wanted her. I didn't sleep that night. I lay beside her, her breathing steady, while my mind spun like a tire in mud. Was she talking to him? Was she comparing me to him? My hands fisted the sheets, my breath shallow. I'd given her everything. My time, my dreams, my heart. But Ryan was a shadow I couldn't fight, a memory I couldn't erase. I thought of our wedding day, her hand in mine, her vows carved into my soul. Were they lies? Or was I just not enough? By morning, my anger had hardened into something colder, sharper. I watched her over breakfast, her phone buzzing beside her plate. She didn't pick it up, but her eyes darted to it, hungry. I sipped my coffee, the bitterness matching my mood. I wasn't ready to lose her, but I wasn't ready to be a fool either. I needed answers. I needed to know who Ryan was to her now. Her phone lit up again, his name flashing like a warning. I set my mug down, my knuckles white, and made a choice I couldn't take back. The air in our apartment was heavy that night, thick with the weight of words unsaid. I sat on the couch, my hands clasped tight, the TV flickering some show neither of us watched. Sarah stood by the bedroom door, her silhouette sharp against the dim light. Her suitcase sat by her feet, half-packed, a silent scream of her intent. I'd known something was coming. Her late-night calls, her guarded smiles. But knowing doesn't brace you for the blow. My name's Ethan, and at 27, I thought I'd build a life that could withstand anything. I was wrong. You're leaving, I said, not a question. My voice was low, steady, though my chest felt like it was caving in. She didn't look at me, her fingers twisting the strap of her bag. I need to figure things out, she said, her voice soft but cutting. Ryan, he's my past, Ethan. I never got closure. Ryan. His name again, a bullet I couldn't dodge. My jaw tightened, my knuckles white against my thighs. Closure. I echoed, the word bitter in my mouth. What about us? She finally met my eyes, and I hated what I saw. Pity, not love. You're steady, Ethan. You're safe. But I need more than that right now. Her words landed like fists, each one bruising deeper. Safe. The word burned. I'd poured everything into her. Late nights at the warehouse, dreams deferred, every dollar scraped together for our life. And I was just safe. I stood, my legs unsteady, my heart hammering like a war drum. You're choosing him, I said, my voice cracking despite my effort to hold it together. She didn't deny it. She zipped her suitcase, the sound slicing through the quiet. I'm not choosing anyone, she said, but her eyes betrayed her, flickering with a longing I couldn't touch. I just need to know who I am without you. Lies. She was running to him, to the ghost who'd haunted our home for weeks. I stepped closer, my breath shallow, my hands trembling with the urge to grab her, to shake sense into her. But I didn't. I just stood there, fists clenched, nails biting into my palms until I felt the sting of blood. You're making a mistake, I said, my voice low, a growl I didn't recognize. She flinched, but her resolve didn't waver. She lifted her bag, her steps deliberate as she moved toward the door. Each one echoed in my skull, a countdown to the end. I followed her to the threshold, my bare feet cold on the hardwood. Sarah, I said, one last plea, my voice raw. She paused, her hand on the doorknob, but didn't turn. I'm sorry, Ethan, she whispered, and then she was gone. The door clicked shut, soft but final like a guillotine falling. I stood there, staring at the empty space where she'd been, my breath ragged, my world unraveling. The apartment felt like a tomb, her absence a weight heavier than her presence had ever been. I sank to the floor, my back against the wall, my hands gripping my hair. Rage simmered beneath the grief, a fire licking at my bones. She'd chosen him, a memory, a fantasy, over me. But as the night stretched on, that fire grew, steady and dangerous. I wasn't done yet. Not by a long shot. The silence screamed her absence, but my anger whispered louder. I didn't know how, but I swore she'd see what she'd thrown away, and it would cost her everything. The apartment was a husk without her. Sarah's perfume clung to the air, faint but cruel, like a memory that wouldn't fade. I'm Ethan, 27, and I stood in our living room, the silence louder than any argument we'd ever had. Her coffee mug sat unwashed on the counter, lipstick smudged on the rim, a relic of the life we'd built. I couldn't touch it. I couldn't touch anything. My hands shook as I paced, my boots scuffing the floor where we danced to her favorite song. That was gone now, stolen by a name, Ryan. I sank onto the couch, the springs groaning under my weight. The stack of unpaid bills on the coffee table stared back at me, each one a reminder of the sacrifices I'd made. Double shifts, skipped meals, dreams shoved aside. All for her, for us. My chest tightened, a vice of grief and anger squeezing my ribs. I caught my reflection in the dark TV screen. Hollow eyes, clenched jaw, a man I barely recognized. Was this who I'd become? A fool who believed in forever. I wanted to scream, to smash something, to make the world feel the ache tearing through me. Instead, I sat, my breath shallow, my fists balled until my knuckles ached. Her words echoed in my skull. You're safe. Safe wasn't enough for her. Safe wasn't Ryan, with his yearbook grin and whispered promises. I pressed my palms to my eyes, trying to block out the image of her packing, her back to me, her choice made. But the pain was a tide, pulling me under. I wandered to the bedroom, the bed unmade, her side still dented from where she'd slept. Her phone charger was gone, but a hairpin lay on the nightstand, glinting like a taunt. I picked it up, the metal cold against my fingers, and my throat burned. Had she ever loved me? Or was I just a placeholder, a warm body until Ryan called her back? The questions clawed at me, each one sharper than the last. My heart pounded, a drumbeat of rage and helplessness. I hurled the hairpin across the room. It hit the wall with a pathetic ping. I collapsed onto the bed, staring at the ceiling, my pulse loud in my ears. The silence was suffocating, but it was also a mirror, forcing me to face the truth. I'd given her everything, and she'd left me with nothing but doubts. Was I enough? The question was a blade, twisting deeper with every breath. But beneath the grief, something else stirred, a spark, small but fierce. I wasn't just a broken man. I was a man who'd survived her betrayal. And survival, I realized, was power. I sat up, my hands steadying. The bills, the empty apartment, the ghost of her laughter, they weren't my end. They were my beginning. I didn't know how yet, but I'd make her see what she'd thrown away. I'd make the world see. My anger wasn't a weight anymore. It was fuel, burning low and steady. I stood, my shadow long against the wall, and took a breath. The man I'd been was gone. The man I'd become was just waking up. The apartment creaked, empty but alive with my resolve. I didn't know where to start, but I knew one thing. This wasn't over. Not by a long shot. The apartment felt like a cage, but I wasn't the one trapped anymore. I'm Ethan, 27, and Sarah's absence had carved a hollow in me, but it also left room for something new. Her words, "You're safe," echoed like a taunt, but they weren't my truth anymore. I sat at the kitchen table, the same creaky one where we'd planned a future she'd abandoned. A cheap laptop glowed in front of me, its hum the only sound breaking the silence. My hands, still rough from warehouse work, hovered over the keys. I wasn't just going to survive her betrayal. I was going to rise from it. I'd always had ideas, half-formed dreams of a business, something tech-driven, something mine. Sarah had called them cute once, her smile patronizing, like I was a kid with a toy. But now, with her gone, those ideas felt like lifelines. I started typing, my fingers clumsy but determined, sketching out a plan for an app, a logistics tool to streamline warehouse deliveries. It was risky, a long shot, But every doubt she'd planted in me fueled my resolve. My heart pounded, not with grief now, but with purpose. Nights blurred into weeks. I traded sleep for coffee, my eyes burning as I coded in the dark. The apartment, once a shrine to our life, became my war room. Sticky notes covered the walls, flowcharts, deadlines, dreams. My back ached from hunching over the laptop. My fingers cramped, but I didn't stop. Every line of code was a defiance. Every bug fixed a middle finger to her dismissal. I wasn't safe. I was dangerous, a man with nothing to lose. I pitched to investors, my voice steady despite the sweat on my palms. They were sharks in suits, their eyes cold, their questions sharp. "Why should we bet on you?" one asked, his pen tapping like a metronome. I thought of Sarah's suitcase, her pitying glance, and my jaw tightened. "Because I got no reason to fail," I said, my voice low, burning. They didn't all bite, but a few did, enough to get me started. Their money was a spark, but my pain was the fuel. The world outside didn't see me yet. I was still Ethan, the warehouse grunt, the guy whose wife left him for a high school fantasy. But in my mind, I was building something bigger than her betrayal. My app was taking shape, rough but promising, and with every milestone, I felt the weight of her absence lighten. I wasn't doing this for her, not really. I was doing it for the man I'd been before her, before I let love blind me to my own worth. Late one night, I leaned back in my chair, my eyes stinging from the screen's glare. The code was working, the prototype alive. My chest swelled, a mix of pride and rage. She called me safe, but safe men don't bet everything on a dream. Safe men don't burn their pain into something the world will notice. I cracked my knuckles, my breath steady, and imagined her face when she heard my name again, not as the man she left, but as the man she'd never forget. My phone buzzed, a message from an investor, wherein I smiled, cold and sharp, my heart a furnace. She thought she'd broken me, but she'd only lit the match. The glow of my laptop was my only companion, casting shadows across the apartment's bare walls. I'm Ethan, 27, and the life Sarah left behind was a ghost I refused to let haunt me. Her betrayal, her cold dismissal of me as safe, was the coal feeding my fire. I worked through nights that bled into dawn, my fingers flying over keys, coding the app that would change everything. The warehouse job was gone now. I'd quit, betting it all on this dream. My apartment, once a home, was a battlefield strewn with coffee cups, crumpled notes, and ambition. Every line of code was a rebellion. My logistics app was taking shape, streamlining supply chains in ways warehouses like my old one could only dream of. I taught myself to code from scratch, my brain aching from tutorials and forums, my hands trembling from too much caffeine. My eyes burned, but I didn't blink. Failure wasn't an option. Not when her voice still echoed, calling me less than the man she'd run to. Ryan. His name was a whip, lashing me forward. I pitched to more investors, my voice steadier now, my cheap suit replaced with one that fit. "This app cuts delivery times by 30%, I said, my slides sharp, my data sharper. Their nods were slow at first, but money followed, small sums, then bigger ones. My bank account, once a graveyard of overdraft fees, began to breathe. My name started to ripple through tech circles, a murmur of Ethan Carter, the guy with the app. I wasn't a millionaire yet, but I was no longer invisible. The grind was relentless. I'd code until my vision blurred, collapse for a few hours, then start again. My body screamed for rest, but my heart wouldn't let me stop. Sarah's face flashed in my mind, her pitying eyes, her suitcase rolling out the door. Every download, every beta tester's praise, was a brick in the wall I was building between that life and this one. I wasn't just surviving her, I was surpassing her. I catch my reflection sometimes, in a laptop screen or a dark window, and see a man forged anew. My jaw was tighter, my eyes harder, but there was pride there too. I'd lost weight, gained muscle, my hands no longer calloused but steady. The world was noticing. A local blog mentioned my app. A tech meetup invited me to speak. I stood at a podium, my voice low but sure, and felt the room lean in. They didn't know my story, didn't know the rage that drove me, but they felt my hunger. Late one night, I checked the app's metrics, 10,000 downloads. My chest tightened, not with pain, but with triumph. I leaned back, the chair creaking, and let out a breath I hadn't realized I was holding. This wasn't about her anymore, not entirely. It was about proving I was more than the man she'd walked away from. But a part of me, a sharp, vengeful part, wondered if she'd heard. If she knew the name Ethan Carter wasn't just a memory she'd discarded. My phone pinged, a notification from a tech forum. Ethan Carter's app to watch. I smirked, my heart a steady drum. Somewhere out there, Sarah was living her choice, but I was building a legacy she'd never escape. The city hummed outside my window, but I was miles from the man I'd been. I'm Ethan, 27, and my app was no longer a dream, but a force. Downloads climbing, investors calling, my name murmur in boardrooms. The apartment, once a tomb of Sarah's absence, was now a command center, its walls lined with charts and ambition. But even as my world grew, hers was shrinking. Word got back to me, carried on the wind of mutual friends and small-town gossip. Sarah wasn't happy. It started with a text from a buddy, casual but loaded. Heard Sarah and Ryan are struggling, he wrote. Money's tight. He's not what she thought. My pulse quickened, a mix of vindication and something darker. I didn't reply, but I couldn't stop the images in my head. Her packing her bag for him, her eyes bright with a fantasy that was now unraveling. I sat at my desk, the glow of my laptop casting shadows, and let the news settle like ash. More whispers followed. Ryan, the golden boy from her yearbook, was a dreamer with no follow-through. Their apartment, a step up from ours, was drowning in late notices. He'd promised her the world, trips, glamour, a life bigger than mine, but delivered only excuses. A mutual friend saw her at a grocery store, her eyes tired, her cart filled with generics. She looked lost, they said. I clenched my jaw, my fingers pausing over my keyboard. Lost. The word stung, but not with pity. It was justice, slow and sharp. I shouldn't have cared. My app was hitting 50,000 downloads, my inbox flooded with partnership offers. I was building an empire, brick by brick, while her choice was crumbling. But late at night, when the city quieted, her face crept into my mind. Not the Sarah who left, but the one who'd laughed with me, her hand in mine. I hated that part of me still ached, that her misery didn't erase my scars. My hands balled into fists, my knuckles white against the desk. I wasn't doing this for her, I told myself. This was for me, for the man she'd underestimated. I kept working, my focus razor sharp. Meetings, pitches, late-night code tweaks. Every step forward was a step away from her shadow. But the news of her struggles was a quiet fuel, a flicker of satisfaction I didn't admit aloud. She'd chosen Ryan, thinking he was more, thinking I was less. Now, her world was cracking, and mine was rising. I stood in my apartment, the city skyline glittering through the window, and felt a shift. The grief was still there, a dull ache, but it was buried under something stronger, resolve. I checked my phone, a habit I couldn't shake. No messages from her, but I didn't need them. The gossip was enough. Her life with Ryan was a house of cards, and the wind was picking up. I leaned back, my chair creaking, and let out a slow breath. My success wasn't about her regret. Not yet. It was about proving I was more than the man she'd walked away from. But deep down, a part of me wanted her to know. A new email pinged. A major investor wanted in. I smiled, cold and steady, as her name faded from my thoughts. But then, a friend's message lit up my phone. Sarah's asking about you. My heart stopped. What did she want now? The email ended at 2 a.m. The subject line stark. Acquisition offer, $10 million. My heart slammed against my ribs, the laptop screen's glow burning my eyes. I'm Ethan, 27, and I'd done it. My logistics app, born from sleepless nights and Sarah's betrayal, was now $1 million empire. I leaned back in my chair, the city skyline glittering beyond my new apartment's window, a far cry from the shoebox I'd shared with her. My hands trembled, not with fear but with triumph. I was no longer the warehouse grunt she'd called safe. I was Ethan Carter, the name in headlines. The deal closed that week, a whirlwind of handshakes and signatures. Investors clapped my back, their smiles sharp with dollar signs. I stood in a tailored suit, my posture straighter, my voice steady. The press called me a rising star, a self-made man who turned grit into gold. But as I smiled for photos, my mind drifted to her. Sarah, the woman who'd walked away, who'd chosen Ryan's empty promises over me. Did she know? Did she see my name splashed across tech blogs, my face on LinkedIn posts? I moved through my days with purpose, my new office buzzing with hires who believed in my vision. The app was scaling, 100,000 downloads, then 200,000. My bank account was a number I couldn't fathom, but it wasn't the money that drove me. It was the fire she'd lit when she left. Every milestone was a brick in the wall between the man I'd been and the man I was now. My jaw tightened when I thought of her pitying eyes, her suitcase rolling out. I wasn't that Ethan anymore. Yet, she haunted me. Late at night, when the city quieted, I'd pour a whiskey and stare at the skyline, her laughter echoing in my skull. Not the cold, distant Sarah who'd left, but the one who'd danced with me in our old kitchen, her hair catching the light. I hated that she still had a hold on me, that my victory felt incomplete without her knowing. My fingers gripped the glass, the ice clinking, my pulse steady but heavy. Was I building this for me, or to prove something to her? I walked the city streets, my breath visible in the crisp air, my shadow long under streetlights. People nodded at me now, strangers who'd read my story. Ethan Carter. They'd say like my name meant something, and it did. But in quiet moments, I felt the weight of her absence, a scar that success couldn't erase. I'd built an empire, but the boy in me, the one who'd loved her, still wanted her to see it, to feel the sting of her mistake. One morning, I opened my inbox to a flood of congratulations. A tech magazine had named me Entrepreneur of the Year. I stood in my office, the glass walls reflecting a man I barely recognized. Taller, sharper, forged in fire. My chest swelled, but my thoughts snagged on her. Did she read the headlines? Did Ryan see my name and flinch? I pushed the thought away, my hand steady as I typed a response to the magazine. This was my dawn, my $1,000,000 moment. She was just a shadow now. My phone buzzed, a message from an unknown number. Ethan, it's Sarah. Can we talk? My breath caught. My heart a sudden storm. After all this, what could she possibly want? Her text burned in my pocket as I walked into the coffee shop. Ethan, it's Sarah. Can we talk? I'm Ethan, 27, a millionaire now. My name etched in headlines. My app a beacon of my rise. But her words dragged me back to that night. Her suitcase, her pity, her choice. I'd agreed to meet her, not out of hope but curiosity, a need to see the face of the woman who'd broken me. The bell above the door chimed as I entered, my suit crisp, my pulse steady but loud in my ears. She sat in a corner booth, her fingers twisting a napkin, her eyes darting like a trapped bird's. She looked smaller than I remembered, her hair dull, her face lined with strain. Ryan's promises had worn her down, just as the gossip said. I slid into the seat across from her, my hands clasped, my face a mask. You want to talk? I said, my voice low, a blade wrapped in calm. Ethan, she started, her voice trembling. I made a mistake. The words hit like a gust of cold wind, stirring the embers of my anger. Her eyes, once bright with love, now shimmered with regret. Ryan, he wasn't who I thought. I was wrong about everything. She leaned forward, her hands reaching, but I didn't move. My chest tightened, memories of our life flashing. Her laughter, our vows, her betrayal. I wanted to feel nothing, but a dull ache stirred. I read about you, she said, her voice soft, almost proud. You're doing so well. I always knew you could. Lies. She called me safe, a cage she'd fled. My jaw clenched, my fingers digging into my palms. You didn't believe in me. I said, my tone flat but sharp. You chose him. Her face crumpled, tears welling, but I felt no urge to comfort her. The man who'd love her was gone, buried under the empire I'd built. She spoke of her life now. Debts piling, Ryan's temper, their crumbling dream. I miss us, she whispered, her voice breaking. I want to fix this. My heart raced, a storm of rage and grief. Fix this? She'd shattered our world, left me to bleed in the wreckage. I leaned back, my breath slow, my eyes locked on hers. There's no us, I said, each word a stone. You made sure of that. Her tears fell now, silent, and part of me, the boy who'd loved her, wanted to reach out. But the man I'd become, forged in her betrayal, held firm. I saw her for what she was, not the woman I'd loved, but a stranger chasing a past she'd burned. My success wasn't her redemption, it was mine. I stood, my chair scraping the floor, my shadow falling over her. You don't get to come back, I said, my voice cold, final. She looked up, her eyes pleading, but I turned away, my steps deliberate, my heart a furnace of resolve. The bell chimed as I left, the air outside crisp, cleansing. I'd faced her, seen her regret, and felt nothing but the weight of my own strength. But as I walked, a question gnawed. Had I won, or was I still tethered to her ghost? My phone stayed silent, her number blocked, but my heart wasn't quiet. I'd faced her, but the final step of my revenge was coming, and it would cut deeper than words. I stood outside the coffee shop, the city's pulse thrumming around me, but my world was still. I'm Ethan, 27, a self-made millionaire, my name a beacon in a world that once ignored me. Sarah's tear-streaked face lingered in my mind, her pleas echoing like a fading storm. I want to fix this, she'd said, but her words were ash, scattered by the wind of her betrayal. I didn't shout or curse as I left her there. My revenge wasn't in anger. It was in the quiet, unyielding strength I'd built from her ruins. I walked the city streets, my breath visible in the cool air, my steps deliberate. The skyline glittered, a testament to my rise. My app was a titan now, its logo on billboards, its name on lips across the industry. I'd turned her dismissal, "You're safe," into a lie she'd never outrun. She'd seen me in that booth, not as the broken man she'd left, but as Ethan Carter, the one who'd conquered her doubts. My heart beat steady, not with triumph, but with clarity. I didn't need her to hurt. I didn't need her to beg. My justice was in living well, in being the man she'd never believed I could be. Her regret was her cage, not mine. I'd heard the whispers. Her life with Ryan was a mess of debts and fights, a dream turned to dust. She'd come to me seeking a lifeline, but I wasn't her savior. I was my own. My hands, once clenched in rage, now rested easy in my pockets. The weight of her betrayal lifted. Back in my office, I stood at the window, the city sprawling below. My team bustled behind me, their voices a hum of progress. I'd built this. Every line of code, every deal, every sleepless night. Sarah's face flashed again, her eyes pleading, but I pushed it away. She was a chapter closed, a lesson learned. My jaw tightened, not with anger but with resolve. I'd given her my heart once. She'd never touch it again. I thought of the boy I'd been, the one who'd loved her blindly, who'd ignored the signs, her late-night texts, her distant smiles. That Ethan was gone, forged into someone stronger, someone who didn't need her approval. My revenge wasn't in ruining her. It was in rising above her. I let her see the man I'd become, let her choke on the truth of her mistake. And then I walked away, my footsteps echoing with finality. As I sat at my desk, my phone buzzed, a news alert. My company was expanding, a new partnership sealed. I smiled, a quiet, steady thing. Sarah would hear about it, maybe see my face on a screen, and know she'd bet on the wrong man. But this wasn't for her. It was for me, for the fire she'd lit when she left. I leaned back, my chair creaking, and let out a slow breath. I was free, not just of her, but of the need to prove anything. The city glowed, my empire alive in its lights. But as I closed my laptop, a question lingered. Had I truly let her go, or was my victory still tied to her regret? I stood at the edge of my penthouse balcony, the city a sea of lights below. I'm Ethan, 27, and the man I was, shattered by Sarah's betrayal, is a stranger now. My app is a titan, my name a headline, my life a testament to what pain can build. The air was crisp, carrying the hum of a world that knew me as Ethan Carter, the self-made millionaire. But up here, alone, I was just Ethan, the man who'd learned to stand taller than his scars. Her face still crept into quiet moments, unbidden. Not the Sarah who'd begged for forgiveness in that coffee shop, her eyes wet with regret, but the one who'd laughed with me in our old apartment, her hand warm in mine. I gripped the balcony railing, my knuckles pale, and pushed the memory down. She called me safe, left me for Ryan's empty promises. That wound had fueled my rise, but it didn't own me anymore. My breath steadied, slow and sure, as I let her fade. My office buzzed with life, new hires, new deals, a future I'd carved from nothing. I walked its glass halls, my reflection sharp in tailored suits, my steps steady. Colleagues nodded, their respect hard-earned. I'd built this empire not for her, not for revenge, but for the boy who believed in love and lost it. Every contract signed, every milestone hit, was a brick in a fortress she'd never breach. My heart, once a battlefield, was now a quiet stronghold. I thought of her life. Whispers of her and Ryan's struggles still reached me. Debts, fights, a dream that had soured. I didn't smile at the news, didn't gloat. Her regret was her burden, not my victory. I let her see me in that coffee shop, let her feel the weight of her choice, and walked away. That was enough. My justice wasn't in her pain, but in my freedom, the life I'd built without her. My hands, once clenched in rage, now rested easy, steady. Late at night, I sat at my desk, the city's glow filtering through the blinds. My phone lay silent, her number long blocked. I opened a drawer, pulling out a photo from years ago. Us at our wedding, her smile bright, mine trusting. I didn't ache anymore, didn't burn. I set it down, my fingers steady, and closed the drawer. That Ethan was gone, but he'd left me stronger, wiser. I was a man who knew his worth, who'd turned betrayal into power. I leaned back, the chair creaking softly, and looked out at the skyline. The world was mine now, not hers. I'd rebuilt my heart, guarded but open, ready for a future untainted by her shadow. Her betrayal had shaped me, but it didn't define me. I was free, free to live, to build, to be more than the man she'd left behind. My pulse was calm, my breath even. This was my peace, hard won and wholly mine. The city hummed, my empire alive in its pulse. But as I turned off the light, a final question flickered. Had I buried her ghost, or would it linger in the quiet?